All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This morning we're going to take a look at the results of the exit slip. I wanted you to have a resource for you to go back and look at in case you had questions over why we either got something incorrect, of course, being able to identify your errors, or if you don't remember what you did to complete the exit slip, this is going to be a great resource for you too. So notice at the top, here's our given information. We are told what sign is. We are also specifically told that sign is in the first quadrant. So I went ahead and I labeled my triangle over here for the diagram. We know that if opposite over hypotenuse is 12 over 13, we should also be able to identify that missing side as having a value of 5, of course being one of our Pythagorean triples. Now, in order to evaluate our double and half angle identities, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my handy dandy yellow sheet. And before I do anything, before I start solving the problem, I want to write out my formula. So if I'm looking at tangent of 2a, okay, 2 times our angle A, I'm going to write it out as 2 times tangent of that angle over 1 minus tangent of A squared. Okay, from here, we know that we have all the information. We're only looking at one single angle. So I can go ahead and plug in what we know. So I have 2 times tangent of that triangle, which is 12 over 5. And I'm going to divide by 1 minus 12 over 5 squared. Okay, we know that we can go ahead, we can simplify the numerator into our calculators because we don't have a radical. And the same thing goes for the denominator. So I can plug both of those in separately. Once we do that, I'm going to wind up with 24 over 5 all over negative 119 over 25. Okay, please be careful when you go back and plug this into your calculator. We know that in order to evaluate this quotient, we need to keep each fraction grouped together in our parentheses, or brackets in this case. And once we evaluate it, we should wind up with tangent of 2a is equal to negative 120 over 119. Okay, so that is our answer. Now, for the second problem, we have to be a little bit more careful as far as our signs. Remember, we have that plus or minus in front of the radical, and we have to decide if cosine of a over 2, cosine of half of angle A, is positive or negative. So a couple things that you'll notice. I'm going to move this down a little bit. Our angle is in quadrant 1, so we know that 0 degrees, right, is less than A, which is less than 90 degrees. And if we take half of that angle, we are still going to wind up with angle A being in between 0 and 45 degrees. So in this case, we are still in quadrant 1, and in quadrant 1, we have positive cosine. Okay, so we know that we're going to be taking the positive value of that radical. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in what we know. I'm going to write out my formula. So I have 1 plus cosine of A divided by 2. Okay, so plugging in what we know, we can go ahead and rewrite this as the square root of 1 plus 5 over 13 divided by 2. Okay, I can simplify that in our calculator. So I have the square root of 18 over 13 divided by 2. And once I reduce that down, I am going to wind up with the square root of 9 over 13. And we have to be careful here. Technically, if we split that up using our quotient property, we know that we're going to have a radical in our denominator still. So I can break this down. I can look at the square root of 9 over the square root of 13. This is what we have a problem with. Okay, we want to make sure that we take care of this radical that's in the denominator. So once we go through and rationalize, we should wind up with a final answer of 3 radical 13 over 13. Okay, so please go back, check your exit slip. I would retry some of these problems on your own, and still, if we're making mistakes, please come in and talk with me. Thanks.